You are standing in front of a mirror right now. Maybe you do not even think about it, your skin, its color, where it came from. But the answer is older than language, older than fire, older than anything you have ever been taught in a classroom. And it is far stranger than you think. Your skin color is not an accident. It is not a background detail. It is the result of one of the most dramatic biological transformations in the entire history of your species. A transformation that unfolded over hundreds of thousands of years, driven by forces so powerful they rewrote your DNA just to keep you alive. And here is the part that stops most people cold. Your ancestors were not always the color you are now. Whatever shade you see in that mirror today, it was earned. It was fought for. By bodies that had no choice. So what actually happened? Why did humans go from dark to light, or light to dark? And why does it matter more than anyone ever told you? Let us start at the beginning. The real beginning. Around 6 million years ago, your earliest ancestors were not human at all. They were ape-like creatures living in the dense forests of Africa, covered almost entirely in fur. And under that fur, their skin was pale, light pink, almost translucent. Exactly like the skin you find under the fur of chimpanzees today, because they did not need skin color. The fur was doing the work. Then something shifted. The forests began to thin, the climate changed, and your ancestors were pushed out into the open savanna under a sun that never let up. This is where everything changed. Out in the open grasslands of East Africa, that pale pink skin was exposed to direct ultraviolet radiation for the first time. And UV radiation is not kind. It destroys something called folate, a B vitamin so critical to human reproduction that without it, fetuses develop neural tube defects. Pregnancies fail. Newborns do not survive. Researcher Nina Jablonski, a biological anthropologist at Penn State University, has spent decades mapping this exact relationship. Her work showed that the populations living closest to the equator, where UV radiation is most intense, develop the darkest skin over time. Not by choice, by survival. The individuals whose bodies could produce more melanin, the pigment that absorbs and blocks UV rays, were the ones whose pregnancies succeeded, whose children lived, whose genes carried forward. Melanin is the key to all of this. It is the ancient armor your body invented. Dark skin is not a disadvantage, it is a solution. A precise, elegant, evolutionary solution to the problem of living under one of the most powerful energy sources in the solar system. So your earliest fully human ancestors, the ones who walked upright across the African savanna roughly 2 million years ago, almost certainly had very dark skin. Scientists refer to this as the ancestral state, the baseline, the original color of your species. And for hundreds of thousands of years, this held. Homo erectus, moving through sub-Saharan Africa under an equatorial sun, carried that deep melanin protection with them wherever they went. But then, around 70,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened. Small groups of humans began to leave Africa. They moved north, through the Middle East, into Europe, into Central Asia, and as they moved further from the equator, something changed about their environment. The sun moved. Not literally, but in effect. The angle of sunlight hitting northern latitudes is far weaker than the direct overhead blaze of the tropics. UV radiation dropped, and suddenly, dark skin was no longer just a shield. It became a problem. Here is why. Your body makes vitamin D using UV radiation. Sunlight hits your skin and triggers a chemical reaction that converts a precursor molecule into the vitamin D your bones, immune system, and organs desperately need. Dark skin absorbs UV rays before they can penetrate deep enough to trigger that reaction efficiently. In a high UV environment, this does not matter. There is more than enough sunlight to do the job. But in Northern Europe, in Scandinavia, in Northern Asia, where winters are long and sunlight is weak and cloudy skies dominate for months at a time, dark skin suddenly left those early migrants dangerously deficient. Vitamin D deficiency causes rickets, a bone disease that deforms the skeleton and cripples children before they can walk properly. It weakens the immune system. It disrupts the calcium metabolism that keeps your heart beating correctly. Without enough vitamin D, you die younger. Your children grow up weaker. Your reproductive success plummets, and so the pressure reversed. In northern latitudes, the individuals whose skin was slightly lighter, whose melanin levels were a little lower, were the ones who produced enough vitamin D to survive the winter. Their children were stronger. Their bones were straighter. They lived longer. And over thousands of generations, the populations that migrated north grew progressively lighter, not by choice, but because the darker, skinned members of those populations were slowly, quietly, relentlessly selected out. Researcher Mark Pagel of the University of Reading has shown through genetic analysis that this shift happened far faster than previously thought. Skin color can change substantially within just a few thousand years of migration when the selection pressure is strong enough. This is not slow drift. This is evolution running hard. And here's the twist that almost no one tells you. White skin in Europe is surprisingly recent. A landmark study published in 2015, analyzing ancient DNA extracted from hunter-gatherer skeletons found across Europe, revealed that even 9,000 years ago, the people living in what is now Spain, Luxembourg, and Hungary had dark brown skin. They had blue eyes in some cases, but dark skin. The pale-skinned, blue-eyed European look that many people today associate with deep ancestral heritage is, in evolutionary terms, barely older than agriculture. It emerged largely in the last 10,000 years, accelerated perhaps by dietary changes and the adoption of farming, which reduced the meat and fish that once supplied vitamin D directly through food. Researcher Johannes Krause, a paleogeneticist at the Max Planck Institute, has led multiple excavations of ancient European skeletons. His team's genetic reconstructions confirmed it repeatedly. The people who painted the cave walls of France and Spain, who carved figurines from mammoth bone, who hunted woolly mammoths across frozen tundra, many of them had skin that would today be classified as dark or brown. Your sense of what Europeans have always looked like is, quite simply, historically wrong. And none of this is unique to Europe. The same story played out across Asia. Populations that moved into East Asia developed their own distinct genetic variants affecting melanin production. Variants completely different from the ones that lightened European skin. Two separate evolutionary paths arrived at a similar result through entirely different genetic routes. Because the UV problem was the same, but the DNA solutions were not. In South Asia, in the Middle East, in North Africa, populations settled in intermediate UV zones developed intermediate shades. In populations near the equator in sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, and the indigenous peoples of Australia and Melanesia, deep melanin protection remained the most advantageous adaptation and was preserved through every generation. Your skin color tracks where your ancestors lived and how long they lived there. That is all it is. A map of ancient sunlight. A record of survival. There is one more layer to this that most people never hear. Skin color in humans shows more variation than almost any other visible trait. Yet genetically, that variation accounts for a tiny fraction of the differences between human populations. The genes that control skin pigmentation, primarily SLC24A5, CEL-C45A2RC2, and OCA2, are just a handful among the 20,000 protein coding genes in your genome. Everything else, your intelligence, your personality, your vulnerability to disease, your emotional depth, is far more shared across every population on Earth than the color of your outer layer would suggest. Jablonski puts it plainly. Skin color is a terrible guide to anything else about a person. It tells you only about UV and vitamin D and the latitude where your ancestors spent the last several thousand years. That is it. That is the whole story. And now look at yourself in that mirror again. Whatever color you see, it is ancient. It is precise. It was not given to you randomly. It was earned by bodies far older than yours, navigating a sun that never negotiated. The color on your skin is not who you are. It is where you have been. And the road that brought you here stretches back to a treeless African plain, under a sun that was trying to kill your ancestors before they could become you.